So I'm going to show you a little about a block and a site-wide asset called Syntax Anywhere. With Syntax Anywhere you can add a Syntax Anywhere block to a page and it will find any code you've written within other parts of the page and highlight them nicely, and there's lots of options for highlighting and plenty of ways that you can add source code to a page. It's great for writing about code bloggers, documentation, that sort of thing. You can also add Syntax Anywhere site-wide, which is something we'll come on to later. So here's something that I started earlier. It's a content block with a little bit of the Syntax Anywhere documentation on it, and I'm going to insert some code. So first I'll show you the block and we'll put it into edit mode. There we have it, and what I'm going to do is put in a couple of markers, which to anyone who will have seen the Concrete 5 forums and used them will have seen these markers for adding code. We can also put code within pre or code tags. This is just quite an easy one to demonstrate, and it's quite flexible because you don't have to rely on picking up any particular tags or anything like that. And I prepared some source code earlier that I have in the paste buffer. It's just some rubbish code that demonstrates syntax highlighting of various things. We have a PHP class with a method in it, we have some style output, we have some HTML output, we have some comments, and we have some JavaScript. So I will save that block, and here you can see that the content block has hidden the internal formatting, and it's turned each of these lines into a paragraph where I pasted it, because I pasted it in normal content mode. Now let's add a Syntax Anywhere block to the page. It's down here in a section called Developer, and I'll put it at the top. It doesn't matter where the Syntax Anywhere goes, it's just a bit of a habit. And we'll see here straight off we get a selection tab, and one of the things that's enabled by default is elements wrapped within code, which is what we've just done. Syntax Anywhere comes with a selector for the area of the page that it's going to work within and things that it definitely doesn't want, and these are set up for the default dashboard controls and toolbar. We definitely don't want to mess around inside there, and for an elemental theme, main container is a good place to look for syntax elements. You might want to add something a bit more specific, or you might want to change that for whatever theme you're working with. This is a good starting point for Bootstrap themes. So far we haven't changed any default settings, and what we'll do is we'll just go to the syntax processor section, and we've got a syntax processor called Highlight, and it's using a default theme, and I'm going to change that to something that looks a little bit more interesting. So we'll change this one Darkular because it's good contrast, and we'll add the block. I'm not going to do anything else at the moment, leave everything else default. So here we have Syntax Anywhere, and what it does in edit mode, it shows what settings it's got, and we'll publish, and there we have our code laid out and highlighted. Let's now go to the dashboard. First I'll make a little change to our page. Let's edit our Syntax Anywhere block, and rather than using any custom settings, I'm actually going to remove it. So let's go there and delete it. So now when I save the page, there's our source unsyntaxed. And if we go to the dashboard and we look at the Syntax Anywhere dashboard settings, before we do any more, we can enable it globally. This enables Syntax Anywhere for anywhere on the site. It will look for it on all pages, and these are global settings that are used for across the site, or if not enabled globally, they're used as the default for any syntax block that you add to a page. I'm going to go back for another theme. Let's have a look down here. Solarized dark. We have a few other options that we can go through. We can change the font size within the syntax settings, so we can make it, say, a little bit smaller. We can have a tab to spaces swap. Now the code that I pasted in already had spaces in, but I'm going to put something in there just in case. Background color, we're going to leave those alone. You can play with the text color and the background color. The syntax processors will put their own thing on top of this, and then there's a little bit of a compromise between the syntax processor and what you select here that you can control later. In the syntax processor tab, if we actually look down here, we could dominate the background. That means the syntax processor is going to override the background color from the display, or we could inherit the background. We can escape HTML tags before processing the syntax. Now with highlight.js, it's pretty good at picking out HTML tags, so we don't need to escape them. Some of the other syntax processors you may need to. Well, let's have a look. Other syntax processors we've got. We've got highlight, which is quite a good one. None, that's just a block that'll pre-format the code and leave it at that. Prettify is originally from Google, also used I think by Stack Overflow, and it has a range of themes. Prettify, again, this is exactly the same Prettify, except it uses local resources rather than a content delivery network. Simple Lines just picks out things and adds zebra striping to them in the colors already defined. I'm not going to select any of those instead. I'm just going to leave it at highlight and solarize arc. Now, tag correction. This is some processing that's applied to correct things that various blocks might do to your syntax in making it safe to go on a page. Blocks will do things like maybe comment out script sections, or change tags to escaped tags and things. What we have here is a pretty good starting point for pasting code into a content block. We're going to reveal any PHP tags, so that should a content block comment out PHP tags, this will take care of it. We're going to remove paragraph and break tags. Remember I said at the start when I pasted the code in that the content block would put paragraphs round each line of code. This takes them out again. We could opt to strip out any HTML, but we don't want that. Replace non-breaking space with spaces. We don't need to do that. We'll unencode less than and greater than to, just in case a block does things with tags. We're going to unescape the source completely. Tabs beginning SA, such as SA any tag name. This is quite a good trick if you've got script blocks that are whatever means of pasting in you've done has left intact. They could get executed, whereas if you change a script block to SA_script, it won't get executed. Syntax Anywhere will find it and turn it back into a script block that's syntax highlighted. Or you could adopt a convention of putting tags in square parentheses rather than angle parentheses. But be careful about doing that, because if you use array short forms, which is common in JavaScript and in newer versions of PHP, it will corrupt them. A few advanced things: we could show the block marker in edit mode, or in the view mode, show blocks that are hidden by block design. We can delay the syntax processing to allow other ready handlers to happen. And then finally, we can export the settings, and there's the current settings. Select them all, and I'm going to copy those, and we could import them again. So I'm going to import the settings that I just exported. There we go. Import those. And this is a great way of copying settings between blocks, between sites, or pasting them to me if you need any support. That way I know exactly what your settings are. So anyway, we now have Syntax Anywhere enabled with a dark theme, solarized dark, and we're going to enable it globally. So there we have it saved, and let's go back to our page, and because Syntax Anywhere is applied globally, it's now applied to the page with the reduced font size that we requested and the theme that we requested. Let's have a look at this little bit. This is a palette of colours. Syntax Anywhere scrapes through the syntax that it highlights and picks out anything that might be a CSS colour, such as RGB or a hash 3 digits, hash 6 digits. I'm afraid it can't pick up just simple colour names. But any numerical colours it'll pick up, and you've got an option to put in a little pop-up palette on the right there. Let's go back to the dashboard now, and Syntax Anywhere on the dashboard. We will go for the syntax processor and pick a different syntax processor. We'll use Prettify, and we'll use it with the default settings. Save it here, go back to our page, and there it is, highlighted with Prettify and the default settings. And I think that's all I really need to show you to get started now. You can also paste syntax into HTML blocks, into blocks that have rich text or plain text inputs, blocks created with designer content or block designer. You can highlight syntax in Markdown, pretty much anywhere you like. All you need to do is to be able to put in a code, end code, or some pre-tags with some marker classes, or some code tags with some marker classes, and Syntax Anywhere will highlight your syntax for you. Thank you for listening.